Hello, is it us you're looking for?
Hey guys, it's your best fight friends. I'm Rachel, that's Kelsey, and today was the first official press conference for Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. And
There was a Real Talk appearance.
Kelsey got to you got to sit in on that.
Oh, I got to slide into that group of people that got to ask, very tiny group of people that got to ask Mike Tyson and Roy Jones a question.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. Mm-hmm. So the question you asked in the group conference, which was it wasn't one-on-ones, but you had one question. You were seventh in line, and you asked.
I was like, y'all must have forgot.
No,
I didn't do that. I asked about why, if you're Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., two of the biggest stars in sport, would you even need the WBC, a sanctioning organization? They made, I forget what the belt's called, frontline belt, because I think it's something people ask a lot. And of course, Floyd Mayweather just last week had the rant against sanctioning belts. So I thought somebody should at least ask. And lo and behold, when Kelsey's 7th place spot came up, the other questions that I had ahead of that had already been asked. Yeah. And I was up with that.
So I think it's a legitimate thing because, right, the WBC is like, hey, here's this, we're going to have a title belt for this exhibition match. So as if, on the one hand, I'm like, doesn't it just like prove the point that these belts are pointless, that you have a belt for an exhibition match? On the other hand, I'm sure some people are like, okay, again, like we have a belt, this means nothing. It's not like, I mean, these guys are going to be fighting at heavyweight, but like, neither of them are going to be heavyweight champion after this fight.
Yeah.
Well, like, nobody's going to confuse that. Now, somebody might call themselves the champ, but it'll be the champ of this exhibition match.
Yeah, when Floyd Mayweather fought Conor McGregor, they fought for something called the money belt that the WBC did, which is probably why it was on my mind when Floyd Mayweather had the rant, because I was like, well, Floyd, you just fought for a made-up belt made up by the WBC. So you're saying one thing,
I'm sure
you're
they
doing
paid
another.
Sanctioning fees for, and I'm sure for Tyson Jones, there's going to be WBC's getting something.
Anyway, Roy had a passionate
Well,
response.
because he comes from another side, right? Us as boxing fans, and like not a casual boxing fan, like we are boxing fans and follow the sport. We have a perspective, right? Well, Roy comes at this from a fighter's perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Kelsey of Heavy and Bleacher Report, you're up.
Thanks, Alani. Mike and Roy, this is actually for both of you guys. Floyd Mayweather had an epic rant about there's too many sanctioning belts, too many sanctioning bodies involved in boxing. So I'm wondering why you two guys, two of the biggest stars in the sport, are involving the WBC in this, and so like why involve them at all, or any of the alphabet organizations? Why is that important?
First of all, I don't give a damn what nobody say. It ain't got to do with me. I don't give a damn what none of them say. I do what I do. My business is my business. I don't care what he and nobody else say. This ain't got nothing to do with him. So he stay over there in his lane, do what he do. Let me do what I do. Secondly, when I was fighting, I wasn't like them. I went and got every belt possible that I could get in my weight class at the time. And Mike did the same thing. We come from the old school. It wasn't no talk about we'll take this with. No. We want every belt you got. I don't care what kind of belt it is. It could be the Joe Patty seafood belt. I want that. I don't care what it was. If you had a belt in my weight class, in my prime, I wanted that. So right now, you think you want to see me perform, you put a belt on the line. I'm sorry, but it's like drugs. I just can't say no. You offer me a title, you got me, baby. We got to do it now. So it don't mean nothing to people like him, maybe, but it meant the world to me.
And he said it all. It's like drugs.
The passion from Roy about it, right. So much so that it spilled over. I had a one-on-one later with him, and he remembered that, asked him that, and was like brought it up again and said more stuff about it. So that's how it must have, that's how passionate he felt about it. So it's just interesting. I think that's important because it's easy to sit around as Kelsey and Rachel or whoever and even offer legitimate criticism of, well, why would we have all these sanctioning belts? However, just like I told Roy Jones on the phone, I don't know, I'd probably fight for one too, right? I mean, it's one of the things in boxing.
Well, it's different when you turn around and you're the other person, like when you're on the other side of the situation. And so I totally get Roy Jones. I've heard him say this in other interviews, and he said it in this one, is that, he's going to fight. He fights for belts. He wants all the belts. He doesn't care what they are. Regional, like diamond, perspective, like he comes from, and how he came up in boxing. He was collecting, gathering all the belts. That's what he did. Now, I think that it's worthwhile for people to maybe sometimes take a deep breath, and that people can have a conversation about this without and just have an open conversation, because that's how growth happens, right? And is there something to be had here with the belts? Like, maybe as boxing fans, we only see one side of this, and maybe there's more to it. And maybe they don't need to just immediately be all done away with.
Well, they're not going to be done away with. But I do think it's important. It's okay to have ideas about certain things. But I think it's, like you said, the fighters, there's a reason why the fighters fight for the belts. And there's a reason why they exist and pop up all over the place. There is a demand there for them. And so I think giving anybody the opportunity to express themselves on that front is important.
Well, it's interesting because Roy Jones Jr. said it was like a drug.
Yeah.
That when the WBC threw a belt on this exhibition match, it was he was even more like, I got to win that belt. It was a trigger for him. I find that very interesting too. I just thought it was a really interesting comment that from the fighter's perspective, I think that it tells me how hard it would be, because we talked about this in a previous video, for a big-time fighter right now, like a Canelo, like a Tyson Fury, to say, I'm going to drop all the belts as a way for us to move forward without all this confusion in boxing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have it anymore. And here I have Roy Jones Jr. describing it like a drug, which really says that it has some kind of pull. I've seen Tyson Fury on his Instagram show his belts. These are so important to him. There's no way Tyson Fury's giving up all the belts,
Yeah.
I get it. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, really awesome. We're grateful that Real Talk with Kelsey and Rachel can make an appearance during the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. press conference. I grew up a huge fan of both fighters. I think Mike Tyson's the first boxer I ever saw in my life inside a boxing ring. I was 5 or 6. He scared the crap out of me. And then, of course, Roy Jones Jr. to me is the best fighter I've ever seen. So it was really awesome to be part of that.
Hey, it's really awesome when you come to Real Talk and watch our show. So we thank you. And please make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already.
And hit the like button. 2 likes.
You can't do that.
3 likes. I'm just making stuff up now. 10 likes.
I mean, if you're going to hit the like button, do it,
Odd
odd number
numbers.
of times.
Yeah. You just do the ones. It's good.
Okay.
1 or 3.